All right, good afternoon again. Our meeting is called to order, and in this particular open and formal session, item 3.01, our business is to try to the best of our ability to solidify the qualifications for Norfolk's next superintendent. Now, a couple of comments as we get started. I would remind us that not that I don't think we're mindful or aware that this is certainly one of the most important, if not the most important, part of our role as a school board. And in this part of the process, we have had a number of opportunities to engage our stakeholders with conversations related to their interest and desires and preferences. We've also, of course, with the assistance of VSBA, had a survey available for stakeholders to complete. That survey has been submitted, of course, to VSBA, and a summary analysis of the survey has been provided back to us. And we also did engage the staff, and we're thankful for their willingness to assist us to also take a look at the survey results, just to kind of help us again with some survey analysis, brief survey results. I will go ahead and pass this around now, and it will not muddy the water, I assure you. And so we're going to keep everybody calm, and so we're going to consider the survey results, our own thoughts and ideas and interest as it relates to the qualifications. And our objective is to be able to provide the feedback to VSBA, that list of qualifications, both required and preferred, so that they might begin then to develop the ad. It's important to me that we make the process. Certainly we want to be as diligent as we can be, but we have this information before us. We've had conversations, and so I want to try to manage our conversation in a way that it can be, how may I say, very organized, and that we can complete this afternoon. Now, you'll notice on your agenda that we do have 3.02 listed for the policy JFCDA for this open and formal. If we need the entire 90 minutes for this matter, then we will take the entire 90 minutes. It's more important that we complete this, and then we can certainly discuss this matter, the policy. We did have discussion on it at the work session last week, so we can certainly have that discussion in the business meeting as necessary, and it may not require as much discussion as we may suppose. I don't know how many of you have your manual with you, the superintendent search manual, but in this manual we do have, beginning on page 34, some samples of announcements of superintendent searches. And so the end result of our work, of course, once we submit our information back to VSBA, they will build an announcement, of course, very similar to this. And so our feedback is very important, and it's very important that we're very clear in what we submit to them, because they're going to build that superintendent announcement and ad based on that. Now, of course, we'll get to look at that ad, and we have to approve or disapprove it prior to it being posted. And so we will certainly have that opportunity. So it is my hope that we would be able to complete this task today. Remember, the 18th, rightly correct, is with the date that we are supposed to have this information back to VSBA. So if we needed to come back around and finish this discussion, continue and complete the discussion, we would need to do it prior to the 18th. It is my hope that we could avoid that if possible. Final thing I will say is, if you have your survey, a copy of the survey, what I'd like for us to do is we will walk down each area: Aaron doctorate, experience as a superintendent, associate, so forth and so on, those 5 areas at the top, and then these other major areas: leadership and management skills, personal characteristics. And we will consider 2 things. We will consider, well, actually 3 things. We will consider what the results reveal to us of the survey, number 1. Number 2, feedback we've heard in our conversations, formal and informal conversations. And then number three, our own personal thoughts as a board and as individuals about each of these areas. And then categorize the major area as either required or preferred. Questions or comments on how we will proceed, what I'm recommending in terms of our process. Yes, Courtney.
So how is it we're going to capture all that tonight and then give that to VSBA?
We'll need a scribe. And then that scribe, I would ask to be willing to email it out to us so that we could be clear that that's what we all said. And again, in each of these areas, we would simply have required or preferred. Is that okay? Who's the recommended scribe? The volunteer scribe.
I write like a doctor, so.
You write like a doctor?
I'll scribe it.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Jordan. Any other questions about how we will move forward? Okay. So you have, and I hope there's no confusion, if we could work, because we'll need to work from one survey or the other, either the one from VSBA, their summary, or the one that our staff was kind enough to summarize for us. But we should be working from the same document when we refer to the survey.
So if I could clarify, this document is a summary of the overall.
Right.
And it provides the articulation of the priorities 1, 2, and 3 for each of the questions. So it's a good snapshot of the overall survey. It certainly doesn't capture all of the written field, open field comments, but it captures the other questions.
So of course, VSBA's summary has actual numbers in the summaries. The 82-page document, pages 1 through, I want to say 13 or 14, provide the results. And I think we're going to be able to look at those hard numbers. Go ahead, Ron.
So I recommend that we use the feedback that we got from VSBA. Part of the intent with the surveys, with the chat and choose, with the public hearings, but in particular with the survey results, was to get feedback from the community partners, stakeholders, our owners, how they responded to the survey. And so in some instances, just having gone through it, you'll see that, like on the first page, when we look at earned doctorate. So it's about an even split between required and preferred. Mm-hmm. And so to me, seeing that type of data gives us a sense of how important a certain attribute is valued, and that's kind of what we communicated to the public. And so I think there's value in seeing those numbers in that context. I mean, we can always use what the staff has put together, I think in particular as we get into the survey questions that address the rankings. Mm-hmm. But I think for the first section, education and training required, preferred, and not important, it's good for us to actually be able to see these results, because there may be some instances where as a board, we may want to deviate from what's been recommended. And I think if we decide to do that, then we should communicate to the public why it is that we're doing that, because our real intent is to try to make sure that our experience, our knowledge, and what we deal with every day, we can marry with the input that we've gotten from the community. So
Okay.
that would be my suggestion.
Okay. Does everyone have the VSBA survey before them?
I do not.
Okay, it's in our email as well, NPS email. And Brad, I will be happy to.
I get it.
Okay. Okay, so let's begin with number 1, an earned doctorate. Okay,
The overall?
It was?
the VSBA's.
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right. So if you look on page 2, page 2 of 82, we will see at the very bottom the percentages and the total there as it relates to an earned doctorate. where 44% in the survey required 39% preferred. I would entertain your comments related to this area.
Well, if
Yes,
I could,
Courtney.
I'm kind of looking at it like Mr. Jordan did, where
Mhm.
if you look at earned doctorate,
Mhm.
you look at required preferred, it's 44 to 39%.
Yes.
Experience as a superintendent, 48 to 40. What's close also is experience as a superintendent, experience as central, but what's not close is, for instance, experience as a principal
Mhm.
to preferred, or experience as CEO, required preferred. So the differentials for a few of them are greater. So I would prefer, looking at those that are more closely aligned, and then talk about our preference of those.
But we will need to communicate in the announcement, or at least to the VSBA, whether an earned doctorate.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
So I would recommend that based upon my recommendation that we mark it as preferred. Unless there's some other
Yes.
indication
I agree.
from what we've heard, I think it continues to broaden the candidate pool.
Sure.
And so it doesn't say it's not important, but it just says it's not required. So I would
Right.
just recommend we mark that as preferred.
Are we all in support of that?
Yeah, I would agree.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay, experience as a superintendent?
I would again recommend a preferred on that.
Yeah, it was interesting looking at the survey results and then thinking about some of the comments that we had. I would agree that preferred makes sense, but I do think that part of the feedback that we got in the comments and from the public feedback, that maybe in the next phase we start developing some questions
Right.
that we can kind of hone in and get a good sense of if somebody is not a superintendent, then how do we draw out their skills and expertise versus somebody that comes to us as
Sure.
a sitting superintendent.
And this is a critical area of our decision, because these three areas, superintendent, associate superintendent, central office administrator, and principal, if it is required, if we make it a requirement that there be experience in these areas, then it totally cancels out the possibility of consideration for a non-traditional candidate. And so we need to be really, really clear about that. So having said that, for superintendent experience, preferred or required?
You're talking about the superintendent?
Yes,
think we said
experience
preferred.
as a superintendent.
Preferred.
Preferred, okay,
Yeah.
okay. Associate or assistant,
Preferred.
central office administrator,
It's about the same.
Yeah,
Yeah.
preferred.
and principal.
Now, that way I think we need to
Yeah.
we need to try to find some balance, because in that whole section, as Ms. Doyle said earlier, that one in terms of the survey results ranked extremely high in comparison to the others. But at the same time, we know that if it's a requirement, then it narrows our pool. So I don't know what others heard, what your thoughts are on that.
The feedback that I heard from the hearings in the chat and chew was they would prefer someone who has walked in the shoes, so to speak, and understood the day-to-day activities of what a teacher, what a principal deals with. So while I'm not sure that we have to necessarily make it a requirement, I would definitely say it needs to be on the preferred category. And that would come into play under our scenario questions. When we ask them if they do not have experience as an elementary, secondary, or high school principal, we can we can talk about that a little bit later, but I definitely, what I heard from the community was they want someone who's going to understand where they are coming from.
Right. And I heard that quite resoundingly as well. Here again, if it were to be a requirement as is suggested here, it certainly cancels out the possibility of considering, you know. And in this case, not just a non-traditional candidate, and I guess anyone that have been a teacher could be considered non-traditional, but of course we know that there are persons who've served in education outside of the instruction, that may bring a great deal of experience in education, but just not instruction, particularly as a classroom teacher or principal. And this would certainly disqualify that potential candidate. And so do I hear that we would have preferred there?
I'm definitely for preferred.
I think for the next one, the CEO, other than school district, to me, looking at the data and what we've heard,
Mhm.
that's a not important.
Okay.
I can't say that in any of the
I agree
forums
with
I heard
that.
anything relative to that. Now, I did see in the written comments, characteristics of a future superintendent being a CEO in nature, and having the characteristics of a CEO running a large organization, I understand that.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's a requirement that they have to have been a CEO.
So just for my documentation, so we said principal is preferred,
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
and CEO other than school district is not important, is that the consensus?
Yes.
And then I think when we get down into the characteristics and the communication piece, it may give us an opportunity, as Dr. Gabriel was just saying, to come back and talk about the principal piece. Because
Right.
my sense was the same as Dr. Gabriel's. I think that, one, there is a strong desire to make sure that communication and understanding and appreciation and visits and all the things that we heard are taking place. But since that is one that we're doing a little differently than the results, I just think when we get done and eventually explain why we made the decisions that we did, that we can come back and just articulate back to the community why we deviated in that sense.
Okay. Next area is that of teaching experience. And we said about 45% for secondary, 35% for elementary level. And again, just based on what I hear us saying as it relates to experience in a school building, the theme is preferred, but not required. For teaching experience, period. Yes?
I would concur.
Yes.
Sorry, what did
Stu,
we
you
say
have any
about that?
thoughts on it?
Preferred.
Preferred.
Thanks for asking.
And we're saying, just broadly speaking, secondary school level and elementary school level, we're talking about both of those together.
Exactly. And
Okay.
I would categorize it as teaching
Teaching
experience.
Okay.
Yes.
And we're saying preferred.
So both of those is preferred, is that correct?
Could you say either or?
What do you mean either or?
Either a secondary experience or elementary experience?
That's what we're saying, we're just not making it required.
Well, I thought either or one would be required.
And I'm suggesting that we one category, teaching experience preferred, period.
All right, so now I need y'all to communicate. What am I documenting?
Under we either require, we are either requiring teaching experience, or we're saying that would be our preference. But I don't think it's necessary to differentiate high school or elementary, but just teaching experience, period.
Yeah, and I would assume that part of that may be depending upon, like, for example, we know that, just going back a couple of years with Great C Schools, we had some challenges at the middle school level. So I took those questions in the survey, giving us the option to say whether or not we wanted to have somebody that had specific emphasis at a particular level based upon the needs and opportunities that we had as a district.
Okay,
But
so then it could be, for example, based on what you just said, preferred at the high school level, not as important at the elementary level, is what I'm hearing?
I'm saying it could be.
Right,
And
I follow you.
I think if we say preferred, we're safe, but
Right.
rather than just lumping it together,
Sure.
that was the reason at least I took it when I did the survey, saw it as a separation.
Okay, and so, are we agreeable upon preferred for each of them then? Okay? Work experience in Virginia.
If there's such a thing as highly preferred, this would be a good place for
I would
it.
say required. I know the numbers here are, 32% said that it wasn't important to them, but the combination of the preferred and their required.
So,
But you realize that only Virginia.
Just as work experience in Virginia. They could have worked here, gone somewhere else, and then come back.
but you do understand, if we put required, that whittles the pool of potential applicants way down.
I think that our state is very unique with the SOLs as opposed to Common Core, with a lot of the governance issues that we face, and I think that they should have experience working in Virginia.
Okay, Ed?
I think that we should keep the pool open. You know, there are people from outside of the state of Virginia who can do an excellent job. I would think that we would want that to be preferred and not required.
Courtney?
I prefer, well, I think we need to, with the candidates who do have experience within the state, are familiar with the Commonwealth. I don't want to limit ourselves, so I do believe that it should be a preferred.
Yeah.
Right.
Preferred.
I also think it should be preferred, but when we get down to the candidate selection, I think it may then weigh one candidate over another.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Warren? Are you
Preferred.
from- Do you have experience in Virginia?
A little bit.
All right.
Okay, so we have preferred, okay. Residency in the school division. I don't think we need to spend any time there, do we?
They all have to live, if they hire them. Does that mean they have to have residency while they're a candidate, or when we hire them?
No, it's when you
No.
hire them.
No.
I'm just.
After
Yeah.
hire.
After
Yeah.
hire. Do we
That's a,
agree on,
that's a
re-
restricted requirement anyway, isn't it?
that's up to us.
Okay.
But we're communicating to the potential candidate pool
That you-
that our expectation is if you come here, you're gonna live here. That's what we're
Right.
communicating.
Correct.
I'd like to offer some comments in that area. Real estate is difficult, and I certainly would want the school board at the time of hiring the next superintendent to understand how important it is to work with a superintendent in the event that their residency prior to coming here is not in Norfolk. You do not want to tell a family that they put themselves into economic difficulty in order to get a job as superintendent.
I mean, we have experience with that.
But of course, even, the initial move to Commonwealth, we would certainly expect that move would be in the city of Norfolk.
Sure.
Right?
I just want to caution you that
Well,
you don't
that's-
want to put someone into
Yeah.
financial difficulty, once you get them, by saying, now you got to sell and you got to be here
Well, that's the
by a
difference between
certain time.
purchasing a home and residency.
Right, exactly,
Right.
exactly.
Just-
Residency doesn't
All
necessarily
I'm
mean we're
doing
requiring
is
you to purchase a
raising
house.
some
Right.
questions that I want to make sure that you think about.
Right, thank you.
Well, and I think it's important to remember, too, that VSBA even said you can't legally require anyone to live anywhere, if I'm not mistaken, Mr. Cloud, right? It's not a,
No, the purchase,
Yeah, I think
that's it, the purchase of home.
Purchase.
Is-
Right.
Yeah.
Because we did have in the contract,
Yeah.
they had to live.
We can require them to live here.
right, but not purchase.
Correct.
Correct.
My
Exactly.
comments are only offered for the board that's going to be selecting this, and to make sure that you say it in ways that are conducive to encouraging someone
Right.
to be a part of the Norfolk Public Schools.
Right. Thank you. So we need to clearly understand that, team, that the requirement is that they would reside, not necessarily own, in the city of Norfolk.
Are we making that a requirement or preferred?
Requirement for
Okay.
residency is what I'm
I heard
hearing.
required.
Okay.
Yes. Okay, now, as we get into these other areas, I would recommend that we follow suit of the survey here, that based on the survey, again, what we've heard in our conversations and our thoughts, that we would identify the three most important areas in each of these that that we would submit back to our VSBA. And I know that when we look at some of these areas, we'd like to have all of those qualities and characteristics. But I don't think that's reasonable or realistic. So we will need to select three, in my opinion. Any opposition to that?
No, I do think that the ranking was forcing those of us that completed the survey
Mhm.
to choose, so that we
Right.
could see, if you look at the results that you provide us from the staff,
Mhm.
you see what they identified as those top three are based upon that ranking. But just looking at it, so in this first section where we see high community profile. So when you look at the survey results, high community profile, like it ranked low, maybe
Like zero.
maybe-
Only 118 respondents.
right. But when we heard feedback from principals, from staff, from the community, it was, consistent about being out there, making connections, going to Civic League meetings, communicating with principals and so forth. So I don't know if the use of high community profile just did not communicate well in terms of what that could mean. But I say all that to say that while we have these top three rankings, we may not list it in terms of qualifications as high community profile, but I think I heard pretty clearly that visibility and relationship building and knowing the community and all that was something that they came
Highly
through.
valued.
So I'm just saying that to say, as we look at these three, I think we should also include that one in some shape, form, or fashion or description
Okay.
in our qualifications.
So let me ask this question. So as we look at the results from Dr. Bailey's shop, from our staff, do we want to, first of all, embrace
The top three.
the top three? That's the first question I would ask. Yes?
And then add if we
Yes.
feel.
Yes. And so then Mr. Jordan is recommending that we would add just based on the feedback that we've received in our conversations, the high community profile to this list of leadership and management skills. That is what you're recommending, right?
Yes, sir.
Is everybody in support of this?
Say that one more time.
So we would add to these top three, writing and speaking ability, decisive leader, visionary, creative thinker, based on the conversations we've had, not necessarily the written survey, high community
Oh,
profile,
absolutely.
okay?
And then if I could, we could reinforce that in the community relations area also, so we can do it in two locations.
Just for clarification for a minute. So, on page 5 in the VSBA results, okay, so I guess team player
Mm-hmm.
just ranked a few points below the visionary creative thinker. Okay, for a minute I thought trying to see how they got ranked.
Courtney, where'd you grab the 118 number?
Under total,
Under total, fourth
Total
column to the
column.
right, high community profile.
Fourth column to the right. And you got 118?
Fourth.
I don't know, maybe I'm not in it. Okay, hold on.
If you look at it, on page, it's on 4 of 82. VSBA's.
Okay, I know,
Yeah,
I
it's
know
the third one
not
from the
one.
bottom.
I got it.
You know,
Okay.
Dr. Houston, you might even want to say out loud for those that are viewing us,
Right.
how many respondents did fill out the survey, because I think that's an important number to share,
Right.
and that total was.
That total was
Yeah.
1,075. Well, that's the number answered. So, I don't think that's the total.
118, got it.
So Bob, we've had over 1,000 surveys
Mhm.
come in, surveys come in.
Right. So as VSBA described it, we had nearly 1,100 respondents to the survey, which
Mhm.
was considered to be strong from the
That's
community.
correct, yes.
Where you get that?
In the email that was sent.
Okay, are we ready to move on to,
It's by Peter.
Yeah, I've got that, I just don't know which, there's,
So let me make sure I'm
One
clear.
that
No,
So-
So,
it's
Signed.
the one with the 501 KB,
okay,
the biggest one, and it has 82 pages to it.
right.
got
So
it.
overall,
Now I'm on the right.
So coming from leadership and management skills,
uh-huh,
we have writing and speaking ability,
mhm,
decisive leader, visionary, creative thinker, and
high
high
community
community
profile.
profile.
Yes.
And Ms. Doyle, did you say something? You mentioned community relations.
Yes, so that's a question
Yeah.
Q6.
Yeah,
Yeah.
on the back of the survey, the second one, the second area that we'll consider.
Right, I think you were saying that
That could help
high community
reinforce.
profile could be addressing community relations.
Not to say it shouldn't be here, it could be in both, because I think honestly, we heard it so loudly and strongly. I think a reinforcement of both areas would be compelling.
Yeah, and the reason I asked that, with you making that point, just going back and again looking at the team player shared decision making, I think that was also something that we heard.
Yes.
So if, I would offer that if we believe that the community relations category would cover the high community profile piece of it, then maybe we consider the team player as the fourth one in lieu of the high community profile. If you all felt that you heard that as well, and if you feel that's
I'm good with
something that
that.
we value,
And the high community profile would be considered under,
we would just.
Community
you-
under community relations.
Right.
Okay,
Okay.
and I'm sorry, Rhonda, we will replace that with what under,
The team player comfortable with
player.
shared decision making.
okay.
Mhm.
Right, I had asked a question about this at the very beginning to ask Ms. Patterson and Mr. Sengerberger what that meant, team player comfortable with shared decision-making. So I think that definitely came out better in the forums that we had versus what the written responses were.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But you want to chime in on that one? You should chime in on team.
Works well and plays with others.
Coach, you always
Alright.
use the coach analogy, right?
Most of the time, right?
Yeah, I think that's huge, and I think collaborative was a word that came out a lot,
Mhm.
but yeah, developing team.
All right.
Okay, are we ready to move to Q3, personal characteristics? And of course, good listener, confident, and intellectual are the top three there. Is there something you wanted to add or change based on our thoughts or conversations with stakeholders? I think this certainly reflects what I heard in the conversations, especially one of the chat and choose and the one at Berkeley. That accessibility piece was kind of a constant theme.
I also heard a lot about, they may not have specifically used the word caring,
Mhm.
but probably empathy,
Mhm.
understanding,
Mhm.
and that's probably something that I heard a
Mhm.
lot.
Mhm.
Patient looked pretty high too.
so that's
The relations.
category.
Patient was high and then not important, or as in number 3, which I was surprised.
Okay, maybe I missed it.
59%.
So, do we want to add the caring and sympathetic?
Empathetic.
Empathy.
Empathy? Yes?
Yes,
You want
I
to add that
would.
as a fourth one there?
I'd be happy.
Could I also add, is this where we might add trust?
Say more.
Well, I know in the public forums, there was a lot of, we need to rebuild trust with the community, we need to have trust between board superintendent, we need to have trust with superintendent, trust with all sorts of relationships. So I wonder if that's part of personal characteristics as somebody who exudes the ability to have trust.
So.
Or would that go, and that's not one of the characteristics outlined here, but it was something
Yeah.
articulated.
But in the.
I think under, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say, in the sample announcements that we have, in our manual, one of the qualifications that was used in another search is creates an atmosphere of trust and mutual respect and maintains open channels of communication to and from staff. So it seems like it kind
It's
of
all encompassing.
all encompassing of what you described.
Right.
And that might be something that
Can we add that?
we could add.
Okay.
Under personal characteristics?
But I'm just saying, once as they develop the
That's
actual
fine.
search profile, we can
Right.
say that that's language that we like and like
Yeah.
to see included.
But we would need to put it somewhere.
Yeah, I'm gonna make a note of it if it's,
Okay.
if the board agrees that
Okay.
that's something we want
I
to
would
communicate.
support that.
I would support it as well.
So would I. So under personal characteristics, then, right now, we would have the good listener and accessible, the 3 reflected here, adding empathetic and caring. Yes?
Yes.
Mhm.
Okay, are we ready to move to Q4, board superintendent relations? See the top 3 here. Is there something we would add to that, or? And of course, this is not
See.
necessarily an area that we would get our feedback from the community, but from this table, of course.
You know, I wonder if it's in this area that we talk about communication between board and superintendent. Well, I know
Mhm.
communication is another category elsewhere. I just think that maybe we should articulate strong, open,
Would that be under Q4?
that's where we are.
Yeah, we're talking about the relationship with the actual board now.
Right,
Yeah.
that's exactly what I'm,
Sure.
pointing out. So I think we should add a communication comment.
Okay.
So
now-
communicates effectively and such and something with
Well,
the
there's open
board.
lines of communication, bi-directional, between board and superintendent, kind of to your point, no surprises, no secrets kind of thing,
Mhm, mhm.
honestly.
Okay.
So we're sticking with the 3 that are there and doing another emphasis on communications.
Yes.
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 One of the things I did, I went back and looked at some of the governance. You know, we first started doing our training with VSBA, we were talking about Carver model and some others. And so I'm not suggesting this as a qualification, but when we get down to the questions or the scenarios, to talk with potential candidates around what type of governance model are they used to, are they looking for? And frankly, we're being interviewed too.
Right.
And I think we have to be in a position to be able to describe to potential candidates what our governance philosophy and process is.
Right.
So I just wanted to highlight that under that board superintendent relations, not as a qualification, but at least something I think we should be prepared
Right.
to talk about. Because in some of the chat and choose, we got a lot of good questions that,
Sure.
of us. And so I think we need to be able to anticipate that some of the questions we got asked by the public, we may get asked by potential candidates.
Right.
So let's word that communications piece. How do we want to word our expectation for communication with the superintendent and the board.
So, no, please, go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say, I was just gonna note it, and maybe when we have some time
Yeah.
to think about it, we can just, go back and look at all the training and everything so that we've done, and maybe we can
Okay.
pick out some language, or since we're working with VSBA,
I say they probably have
I
to.
think
yeah,
so,
be able
too.
to say to them what we're
Yeah.
trying to achieve,
Why
and
try
let them
to
frame it.
wordsmith it?
Right.
Right.
This is what we're trying
Can
to
you,
do.
when
Totally
you,
agree.
just next to communications, early, you could just put a note of early.
Oh, I see.
Is it early and often, is that the whole idea?
Early, often, as much
See,
as
if you have
possible.
trust,
So, I mean, just, since we're just making a note of it,
So whatever you say, put early in there.
I got it.
Friends NG.
Timely.
time-wise, very good.
Okay, staff relations. First, do we support the three that are there as priorities?
This is where I come in with the team building. Has experience creating a collaborative work environment.
Does everyone agree with that?
Yeah, that kind of fits with the, so where it says, creates an atmosphere of trust and mutual respect, you want to put some emphasis there on team building?
I'd like to, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I want a superintendent who's gonna foster that kind of mentality, that culture throughout the divisions, that we're here as a team.
And I think you did say at the last chat and chew that might be one of those scenario questions to describe to us how, in your experience, you have built teams and
Right.
what it looks like, how it feels, and so forth.
If I might add, and I'm not sure how we can word this, but recognizing the strengths, the teacher's strengths, and acknowledging that the district, and I'm gonna just take the words from one of the persons who spoke, not a, I'm gonna fix the problem, like a blanket statement. Someone who's gonna come in and understand that there are many strengths within a division, acknowledge the strengths, so acknowledge staff members who have strengths clearly to them, and not come in with a one-size-fits-all type of approach. And I'm just speaking out loud here, and I don't know how we would word it in this type of setting here, but
I say they're gonna charge us by the inch.
It may not be a qualification, but I do think it's part of that interview process.
Exactly, that's where most of these questions,
Yeah.
these characteristics will be called out. We're just
Right.
giving them a general idea of what we're looking for. I don't know if we have to elucidate every single one, but we can find out when we ask some questions, because that's a great question, Dr. Gabriel, because I'm thinking the same thing.
I mean, can we say something like recognizes strengths within the division, or highlights strengths within division, searches for strengths within the divisions, something like that.
Do you have it, the spirit of what she's saying, Rhonda? You need
Yeah,
more help?
Mark, yeah, you can email me some thoughts on it,
Yeah,
but
okay.
Again, I'm sure-
Sherman's backing me up over there.
I'm sure
And
Peter,
I'm writing stuff down too, so.
Peter's gonna be able to help us out with that.
Who? Peter, okay.
Can I ask, do you
You
think,
said Peter, I'm thinking, Peter gonna help you out with that.
do you think,
Praying for Paul.
do we think under staff relations, we're getting at the point enough that the community shared about the superintendent knowing the boots on the grounds, getting out to the schools, getting to know the principals and the teachers, and being very engaged at the street level?
And see, that to me goes back to the visibility piece. So,
How would you word that? Again, let's not try to
Yeah.
wordsmith it, but that's a good point. It's a great point, because that was a common theme.
Absolutely.
But I also think it's a difference in visibility and really being able to connect with
Correct.
people. You know, you could be highly visible, but also at
Scare the
same time,
bejesus out of people.
somewhat distant. So,
It's part of that team building process.
so that ability to build appropriate relationships with staff district-wide, I mean, I don't know,
Or engage and connect with staff district-wide.
that's good. I like that.
I'm sorry, say it again.
Engage and connect
connect with staff
district-wide.
district-wide.
Okay, because we did hear some comments about, you don't necessarily want someone to come in there that you're fearful of.
Or the woman who represented the drivers, Captain Stellers, she talked about that. She talked about someone who relates to the quote-unquote little person.
Right.
You know, what I got out of those types of discussions was that category of servant leadership type
Yes.
of a person who
Humble.
That's a good
who would come with a strong leadership, but that leadership would be endorsed in his ability to relate to and serve folks on many different levels. So it's that servant leadership concept that's being spoken of here.
That's a
Okay.
good description
Yeah.
right
Okay,
Servant, humble leader.
are we ready to move to community relations?
Okay.
there. Yes.
All right, and we agree with the three that are listed.
Okay, let's see.
So clearly, effectively advocate school issues and needs, ranked in the 60%, nearly 20 points higher than the next closest. So that definitely comes up.
I like all three of them, actually.
As well as community groups.
Do we want to make sure that we state that we want them out in the, that we want the superintendent to be visible in the community?
Well, this is where we were gonna add the high community profile.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, although it promotes business and community involvement in schools, surprisingly ranked pretty low on the survey. I think that's extremely important.
You're right. I mean, if we're trying to develop a CTE
Exactly.
and get
Yeah,
community
I'm-
support.
I'm really
for-
surprised that it
for-
scored.
Okay.
Yeah.
the
I don't
way
think
it
people
did.
realize how important it is. And again, we're talking about people that take survey that are not necessarily
Yeah.
in the day-to-day.
Well,
I think it's also an indication of who took the survey.
Well, I think even more so than that, keep in mind you're being asked to rank your top three.
Right.
And
Good-
so,
good point.
when you look at those top three,
Yeah.
advocate school issues and needs,
Yeah,
we
it's
hear that
pretty high.
all the time.
Right.
And
Right.
then relates well to a variety of community groups. In some respects, you could say that if you are relating well to community groups, then you're out there promoting and getting people involved. So I'm not surprised that it is in that area based upon you had to choose three.
Yeah.
But it definitely is something that
We should add.
maybe a proven track record in,
Yeah.
or something
Yes.
like that.
Yeah, and I would also suggest that it would be listed among those potential questions for the candidates to describe how they have done that
Give us
successfully.
evidence of.
Yes. Mhm.
So I have something along the lines, Rodney, of, Mr. Jordan, a proven track record in developing and cultivating business and community involvement in schools.
Got it.
Any other comments under Q6? Q7, school finance.
agree with the
Yeah.
priorities for sure.
Mhm.
Yeah, so, okay, you got it. No disagreement with those? Or maybe I should say I support those.
Mhm.
Do you feel like we need to specify under lobbies for school funding on behalf of school division, from where? From the state, for grants, for, or do we just leave, can we just leave it blank, like lobbies for school
Yeah, I would-
funding?
I would
Okay.
sources.
Yeah.
And then we, again, that's where you
Yeah.
ferret out the questions in the interview process.
Yeah.
Right.
What is your experience doing that?
Cause I want them to go everywhere, or,
Do we want to, I'm trying to see where that fell here.
Those are the closed budget gaps?
Yeah, pretty low here in that identifying
Knows
program.
how to plant a money tree.
money tree,
Yes.
exactly.
After you advocate, then your gaps will be smaller, so.
Mhm.
You have a pot of goals in there.
So it doesn't sound like we would necessarily add anything to this, as
Mm-mm.
much as ferret information out via the interview.
Mhm.
So the adding, or rather identifying programs for increased funding in our budget cuts. In our process, I think that's pretty important.
Do you?
I mean, something we've had to do every year.
Yeah.
And, it's created a,
I mean, I think every superintendent is gonna have to do that. You know, so, it didn't,
It's kind of a given.
yeah.
you think? Yeah, okay.
In my hometown, the superintendent just took a 8% pay cut.
How much?
8%.
Okay, Q8, areas of expertise.
Can I just go back to school finance for just a second? Forecast change in enrollment and or revenue. I know that we don't have to mention it here, but I think that being that we have had the trend, and I know this year we didn't, of decreasing enrollment, I would want someone who, you know, when we talk scenario situation, you know, what would be their ways of searching out grants or increasing our average daily membership? What have they done before?
I'm sorry, which area?
Under school finance.
Right, I'm with you there.
Forecast changes in enrollment and or revenue.
Right,
because-
yeah, I put a little asterisk there.
And we don't have to, because we said we weren't gonna add anything
Right.
to it, but, you know, just a little note
You-
that.
You wanted on the questions?
Mhm.
I think it's important as we work through this process that we identify specific questions that we, because VSBA will, of course, recommend
Mhm.
questions, but I think it's important that we identify.
I mean, enrollment is an issue that we are dealing with.
Right.
But isn't it a given that that's what the superintendent does?
Yeah, well, in the manual, on page 46, they have sample interview questions.
Mm-hmm.
And some of them deal with that. So I think if we can get through this qualification
Mhm.
piece,
Yeah.
then we come
Yep.
back in the next meeting, we can go through and look at the
Mhm.
sample interview questions,
Yeah.
This is
mark
just
off the
for the
ones we
posting.
like, and then add the ones we want to,
Yeah.
you know.
Okay, so we're moving on to areas of expertise, Q8.
Now, the one thing I would note here is that the third was other, because that was an open field, of which there were several pages of comments.
Mm.
Yes.
So I think that we could look at others in this category that we would view as areas of expertise we want. And certainly, we're taking into account the comments as a whole anyway.
Right, so, Ms. Doyle, you're saying we definitely have, based upon the results, the curriculum and instruction,
Correct.
and the school
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 reform,
reform,
which is strategic planning, total quality management, et cetera.
and then for the other, what?
I'm just suggesting maybe we look at other of these that are already listed and pick one or two, because the other are open fields that we're infusing our thoughts of those into the whole anyway.
Yeah, because going through the 900 some comments that we got with the other,
Right.
plus what we've heard and plus what we've talked about, this could be a place where we focus an area of expertise in morale boosting, coaching, cheerleading, those types of things that we've all
Climate.
talked about, the climate.
Yep.
Exactly.
How about parental engagement? I haven't thought about. this came to my
And
mind.
let me just offer that, when we talk about an area of expertise, I think it needs to be very clear that one could be an expert in that area.
Well, it's just like when we went to the summit and Dr. Constantino has expertise in family engagement.
Right, right, and that makes sense.
Right.
But, and I don't wanna say somebody else doesn't make sense, but I'm not sure you could be an expert in, there was one that was just mentioned, what?
Climate.
Parent engagement,
Motivational, is that
climate,
what you're saying?
morale.
And developing a strong climate.
Yeah, how would it have demonstrated that expertise?
Or experience
In-
with,
I'm not sure. What's your question? How do you?
So I think, I mean, maybe I'm wordsmithing this, maybe a proven, have demonstrated the ability to do something, but to say one is an expert in an area, I'm not sure how you become some things I'm just not sure how you can.
well, I mean, I don't think he's gonna have a certification, or she will have a certification in,
Improving climate.
improving climate, but they could have demonstrated it through
That's
their,
what I'm saying.
through their work
Right,
experience.
Well, no,
that's the
you
point I'm
could
making.
actually see the statistics of superintendents who go in districts and raise the morale and climate of the district.
So they
You know what I'm
demonstrate the
saying?
ability, does that make them an expert? Unless they've done it all over the country. I mean, maybe I'm
What
being
we want-
too technical here, but I just,
Right.
when
I-
I mean, you know what, I've been told the expert is the person who comes out of town and carry a briefcase.
Yes, something against briefcases?
Huh?
Well, I think that, I do think that, it would be probably beneficial to put someone who has, expertise with, morale and climate.
Yeah, because when you look at some of these suggestions for others, there are a number of them that can be lumped in that category.
Yeah.
That really speak to that issue. So I think that would be a great, perhaps not expertise, but
Demonstrated ability,
demonstrated
strength.
ability
Yeah.
or strength.
Yeah, sure.
in
I'm
that
with that.
area.
And one of the things that we did hear from the community, I just noticed this, is that we heard from people that wanted somebody that could lead in gifted education as well as special education. So we've got to find a place for that.
Oh, I think you're right about that.
But then there's
That
other
was
things,
something we
demonstrated
heard
strengths.
repeatedly,
but I think,
Could we say that? Demonstrated strengths.
instead of expertise.
Okay.
Well,
Yeah, but-
certainly, in my mind, a priority would be that climate. I think that's more important for this division with the type of morale
Right.
issues that we have. That person be able to deal in that area, because this is going to be a significant issue going forward.
Okay, so can we say demonstrated strengths and success in, and list those areas that we consider critical? So if we use those words, if those words are acceptable,
yeah,
then what do we want to put there?
Well, my question would be, how many of these are you going to include? I mean, if you're going to include all of these, then it misses the point.
We're waiting for Superman for sure.
What's our priorities? What are our priorities? Academics,
Mhm.
finance, and
Finance and
climate.
climate.
It's all, just go back to the, what's our
Core.
But academics accepted is so broad.
I understand, well, then you gotta hit, but
Closing the
then,
achievement gap, you're talking special education, you're talking gifted.
Gifted education.
So that's very broad when
I would
you
list
say
it.
academics.
I would list it, transformation initiatives,
So you,
Well, that goes back to school reform anyway.
okay.
But just looking at the Gloucester example, there was have knowledge and understanding of, and they listed curriculum instruction, budget and finance, strategic planning, and total quality management. And then the next bullet says, have successful experience at. And in this particular case, leading the organization in goal setting and planning objectives. Like we could do, as you all were saying earlier, have successful experience at, you know, boosting, motivating.
So,
And many of the other areas that you just spoke about
Why
are
is that-
captured in other places here, so.
so wording like,
Demonstrated.
demonstrated success in meeting various program needs, including, and then we could list the programs that,
I don't,
That sounds too.
I mean, I don't think we have to worry about that, right? I think that they're gonna come back to us and they're gonna share with us how to do the wording. I think as long as we get the general feeling of what we want in the other category, that's probably the most important thing.
And then if I could, let's remember, this is not the end. We haven't
Right.
talked about, we want someone who perhaps has worked in an urban setting. Where has that been captured in this? It hasn't quite been, right? So we need to add that in
Uh-huh.
addition. So there's gonna be a kind of whole another other of the other
Mhm.
outside of this.
Yeah, I
So
think
let's
they-
stick with area of expertise. What is it we want to check off? Right now, we have budget and finance, school
Mhm.
reform, we had parental engagement, and then demonstrated strengths in, and I believe we talked about climate.
what you have another?
I had parental engagement,
Mhm.
developing, and then demonstrated strengths and success in the morale/climate. And so if we leave there for the areas of expertise, then we can move on and add all these others that we're interested in as well, that don't fall into this category.
And when we're gonna do that?
We would need to do that now.
Well, I mean, this is our first cut. You
Yeah.
said I'm gonna take all these notes and run them past Sherman and then send them out, right? And so we still have an opportunity to, come back and revisit, right?
Yeah, we need to be real clear about what that comeback is gonna look like, because it needs to go to
Yeah,
VSBA by the 18th.
I understand that, but let's just get through the
Yeah, let's just-
exercise, not try to be perfect the first
Yeah.
time through.
Right.
That's all I'm saying.
Okay, I'm with you, but I still need to understand the comeback part.
When we get to the end, we'll
Come
talk
back.
about it under.
We'll come back to that then.
We'll talk about it under agenda planning.
Okay.
I think what we should do is send the characteristics that we want and then ask VSBA to come up with a
Yeah.
posting.
Well, that's
Well,
what
that's
we're
what they're
gonna
gonna
do.
do.
Well.
Yeah,
then I think-
and they send it to us for us to bless it now
and
before
then
it's
we can-
posted.
And then we can add or subtract whatever we can edit, whatever we want.
All right.
Yeah.
We only got 2 more questions left.
Okay,
So just I just want to make sure I can document where we are.
sure.
Because I heard Dr. Robinson mention something that I know I agree with, and I think that I heard in terms of special education and gifted. So how you describe that in terms of, I don't know, unique populations, I don't know what the appropriate terminology is, but that to me does fall in the area of an expertise.
Well, special education is listed here, so let's
I
add
see that, but
special
gifted.
education/gifted.
And not to throw a monkey wrench in it, but another issue that was really big is the MOU. Patients, teachers were interested in a very strong collaboration between the superintendent and the faculty.
You know, I think we captured that earlier.
Mm,
That's
staff
Okay.
relations,
All
that's
right.
staff
Mhm.
relations.
Okay, got it.
Okay,
So-
so just moving along.
So we're all,
Areas of-
I want you to
areas-
move it along, just tell me what we're
Areas of
moving to.
expertise, we have
Mhm.
curriculum instruction, school
Mhm.
reform, special education, and we're gonna do a /gifted education.
Mhm.
Parental engagement, and then demonstrating strength and success in climate setting, however that word needs to be infused.
All right, you good, Ryan?
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right, and Q9 now. What is the one talent or skill that the superintendent should have to do this job? One talent or skill.
Well,
We had 79 open responses to that question.
Any two the same?
okay, so to be realistic, do you think we're ever gonna land on one?
I don't think we will.
Well, I think as a
but-
board, we should be able to say if he or she has no other talent or skill, we will want to make sure. I mean, it's all, write it down right now.
I would suggest integrity, and of course, that word pops up quite a bit in that survey, so integrity.
I'm not sure it's
is-
a talent.
Okay.
It's a characteristic or.
Do you have any plates?
Humanism, humble, and compassion.
No, those aren't talents or skills. The question is what
traits.
one talent or skill. So communication
Well,
skill,
I would say then,
Effective
conflict
manager,
resolution.
effective manager, effective leader.
I would say communicate effectively.
I like good listener.
yeah.
I think we actually had that too earlier.
Mhm, good listener.
Just going back, just looking at some of the other sample announcements, plus what we've heard, there's, one announcement has a decisive leader who believes every student has.
Which one are you looking at, Rodney?
Page 37.
Okay.
A decisive leader who believes every student has value and the ability to learn, and who possesses a passion to advocate on behalf of all students. So something we really haven't talked about yet is that student first, child first, kid first that we've heard over and over and
repeatedly.
again.
Yep.
And, you know, that might be something that we could capture there, using that as, I mean, that may not be our exact wording, but just looking at that example, that's something that I don't think we've captured yet.
And so you suggested that is a talent or skill as opposed to a quality, as we see so many of these that are listed here.
Yeah, because I think the purpose of this is to force us to have the conversation that we're having. But it's not like you're gonna come up with that one talent and skill and then add that one word to an announcement. So I was trying to capture something that I thought that we've heard in terms of being student first, and we're just putting it out there for consideration.
You're right, we heard that over and over and over again from different lenses.
Every-
Community,
Business,
business, absolutely.
civics.
So I guess my question would be, do we want to answer Q9 the way it's written? Or is that the
I'm
answer you're suggesting?
I'm suggesting no.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well-
I like where Mr. Jordan was going with what language was on was it Orange County?
Yes, ma'am.
Mhm.
I say we recommend that, and then they can wordsmith it.
All right.
Do you just want to read that out
One, two,
loud one more
three,
time?
four. That's the fifth bullet on Orange County.
A decisive leader who believes every student has value and the ability to learn, and who possesses a passion to advocate on behalf of all students.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, now, as I'm saying that, you might want to believe in the proudly diverse cornerstone of a proudly diverse community.
Right.
Well, I think that's like the number one, that would be number one for me. But I do think that if we do even consider one talent or skill, if we're trying to just fill in the blank here, I think motivating is important. And you can be motivating for parents, motivating for teachers, motivating for academic improvement. I think it is a skill to be a motivator.
I agree.
Because being motivating is understanding what teachers are going through. It's saying, I can relate with what you're doing, I've done it before, et cetera. So I would say that I want someone who is a motivator, right? So,
Well, that goes back to that was listed under the leadership management skills in the very first ranking. So again, I don't know if it has to show up in the announcement.
Again,
but
we
I do
have to
think it's
choose.
something we have to.
yeah.
Where you said it on the leadership management skills, Ron?
This one,
Far right, first
Mhm.
page, second column,
Mhm.
third option, says motivator.
Are you talking about on the survey?
Yes,
No, I mean on what we documented.
no, I was saying
Well,
Dr. Gabriel said motivator, and I was.
folks had the opportunity to choose motivating as a
Right.
leadership skill.
I
And
understand.
it didn't surface as one of the top 3.
Right.
So, but as a board member, putting in my input,
Yeah,
I
agree
think that
with
that
you.
is a skill, if we're just trying to fill in the blanks here. I mean, although I really do like what we've said about the bullet point, decisive leader, every student has value, but if we're just trying to fill in a blank here, I think motivating is important.
Okay, are we ready to move to Q10?
Yes.
What is the first issue that the new superintendent should deal with?
So I tend to see that as a good feedback for us for our ongoing discussions, but not necessarily something that would fall into the announcements section.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's a lot of good stuff in here that I think can form some good scenarios and some good questions, and when we get down to the final number, trying to differentiate one from the other. So to me, it's a lot to try to put in a qualification announcement, but I think it's a lot of good feedback and content to inform the rest of the process.
And I'm not sure it's something, like you said, Mr. Flynn, that you would put. Why would you direct someone who you haven't yet even met what they need to do day one? I'm not sure that that's something you want to dictate right off the bat without a good conversation.
But you can ask them what they would do, what
In
they
the-
look to do.
Sure, I would ask the question, but I
Right.
wouldn't put it in
I
the
wouldn't
posting
put it,
of
yeah.
them telling you, Dr. Robinson, you need to do this first thing.
Well, you would certainly assume that a new leader would come in and first of all do their own assessment. And those who apply would have done their homework already on the district, and then would come in and do, deep assessment.
Sure.
Before just kind of
But if you,
attacking some particular area. But I think this is perhaps just asking for our opinion, I guess, on what we think right now is most critical. It's not suggesting somehow that we would impose that, but at least we would be clear on what we think is, I don't know,
Yeah.
Noel is the doctor, I guess you would examine the patient first. I
We do
imagine.
history first.
I always like to tell my doctor what I want you to do first, but you.
But if you
I
look-
don't
if
think
You
we need to put
listen
it in the
first.
thing.
The first thing you do as a doctor is listen.
But if you look at the question, what is the first issue that the new superintendent should deal with? Now, we've listed 3 priorities, right? Academics, climate, budget.
Right.
So should we say, what's the first issue? It's always primary is academics, it's teaching. So would we say the first
I would
issue
argue
is
with that.
looking at the academic achievement?
well, and kind of piggybacking, we at our retreat or whatever it's called, we go through and set priorities for the year. At least for me, this would be the first time that I feel like I have a lot of good input from the community to
Right.
inform that conversation. And so that's why I think this data is good for the discussions that we'll have around questions for the candidates and how we score the candidates. But it's also very good information for us as we set priorities for the new year. I just don't see it right
Let's say
now.
master milestones.
Exactly. But I don't see it having a significant relevance right now
On
to
the
the
posting.
announcement piece.
Okay, well, it's 6:35, and so we certainly need to move towards wrap up if we're gonna start our formal session on time. So I think we made good progress. Let's talk about next steps. Rodney, you will capture this for us and send it out. We will receive it, and prior to submission to VSBA, we want to do what?
So, what I've been doing with the other stages is sending out whatever the notes are, asking to get feedback by a certain date, sending the final draft back to the board for review, and then once we've done that, then we would send it on to VSBA for their action. So, what
I would give you the opportunity now to take 60 seconds and express how important it is that we give you feedback.
You just did it for
And
me.
your timeline, what would be your timeline that you recommend?
Well,
to do that?
I was just thinking if the goal is to have it to VSBA by the 18th,
Can you have it to us by 8 o'clock tonight?
Be here.
if you get me out of here by 8 o'clock tonight, let's see. So that's a week. So I'll have it to you no later than close of business tomorrow. So I would say if close of business on the 15th,
I would
on
say.
Monday.
When is that?
Yeah,
Monday?
if you get it to me tomorrow, I can get it to you 15th, no problem.
I close business on Mondays when you want it back?
Yes.
That's very reasonable. That's more than reasonable.
Yeah,
I mean, it still
absolutely.
gives us 3 days to,
It does.
'cause-
Absolutely.
It's a good time.
and then if I get it back, close the business on the 15th, then, I don't know how much comment we'll get, but I like to think so when's my daughter's graduation? I like to think by close of business on the 16th,
17th.
you'll have that final draft, and so it'll give us 2 more days before we get it over to VSBA.
Now, once we submit the feedback to you, then
Then there's gonna be one other final draft that comes back.
to us,
Right.
okay? So there's no other meeting then before it goes to VSB on the 18th?
As of right now, no.
No, there's-
Okay.
Although, can I just ask the question? A recommendation was made by the community, and I think we liked it with whatever form it was in, that we market Norfolk, and that we are attractive as a city to the candidates possible,
Right.
and that would accompany and be a part of the posting.
Yes.
So have you worked with the division?
Yeah, so the email that I sent out on that brochure, I got your feedback. We
Perfect.
passed it on to communications. Ms. Mather's been working with a layout person.
Great.
She just mentioned to me earlier, she's gonna have a draft, because I asked her if she would give us that content so that we can review it, and then eventually, what we get back from VSBA and what we approve from our communications department gets merged into the announcement.
Perfect. Great.
Okay, so are we all clear on next steps? So then, I'll just push it out just a little further. VSBA, and I have, Rhonda, I have your timeline here. So we'll provide the established qualifications to VSBA by the 18th. They start receiving applications starting on the 15th, but
Well, that was the initial, because the initial plan was for us to
Right.
get it to VSBA today. Once they get the
Right.
final,
right.
and we have what Ms. Doyle just talked about, then that's when they will distribute. If you look in the manual, actually it describes what they will do with the announcements.
But the announcement would come back to the board for approval before it's,
Right, that's what I was just saying.
right, right.
Yes.
Do we know what that date is just yet? And the other question I would have is, so do we sign up on it simply by email communication? Or do you feel the need to come together and say, and bless that before it goes out? I'm just raising this because this is gonna start moving pretty fast, and we're here all together at the table now, so we need to be very clear.
I don't have an answer for you.
Okay,
But I think once we get the information to VSBA, then we can reach out to them and see what makes sense. I mean, I'm not sure that we need to come back together to proofread a document.
and I'm not suggesting that we do need to. I'm only saying, while we're together, if we could get clear on as much as we can, that's gonna transpire over the next 3 or 4 weeks that we do, then that would prevent me from having to try to corral everybody if we needed to come back together. That's my only attempt. That's right, Miss, thank you. Okay, so, all right, then this business is complete until we receive information from, Mr. Jordan on, Monday, and then on tomorrow.
Close the business tomorrow.
Right, and we get back to him by Monday, and then we would await the final document from VSBA. All right, let's do this, are there any questions about tonight's agenda in terms of the business meeting? Yes. Okay,
Under, introduction, she called and said she wouldn't be able to make it.
all right. So for the policy, under consideration tonight, that's not on the consent agenda, I would ask, just for the public's sake, that a brief, a summary of why we are reviewing the policy, and then a recommendation from the policy committee, and then after a motion, discussion certainly would be allowed in our proceeding. Everybody's good with that?
We doing the business meeting?
Yes.
Yes.
And we do have information relative to the lease agreement, both for the Booker T. Washington Care Center and Camp Allen. Of course, that's federal property that, that we lease, and that's pretty perfunctory. I just want to make sure we're clear on what so when it's time to.
vote.
Yes, I'm not saying there won't be opportunity for discussion, but just so at least there's,
Okay,
and Camp Allen is on the consent agenda,
okay.
so there certainly wouldn't be any discussion for that.
So we will have the opportunity for discussion for the lease agreement with Booker T. Washington?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that's a separate item, it's not on the consent. Okay? And of course, there was a revision now, June 10th, I want to make sure we all,
Oh, sorry.
yeah, June 10th, the revised agenda, I want to make sure we all operate from the same document. This was revised on June 10th, top right-hand corner, tonight's agenda.
Okay.
What's the revision?
On the last one, the Booker T. Washington Care Center was not
That
on
was
there.
added. Well,
Yeah.
can't-
So 6.01 and then 5.45 on the consent agenda was added.
That's correct.
Okay.
Will we have to
Okay.
move to approve the agenda?
Not necessarily, yeah. Just note those changes. Okay, all right. Anything else for the good of the order for this, yes? go ahead.
Sure. So can we also say, for the board, as we look ahead, typically our informal meeting would be July 1. July 1 is the day that we will have the swearing in of the new board members.
Right, mhm.
And so we'll be moving our informal meeting to July 8th.
Well, now, you all have
Yes.
agenda planning tomorrow.
Right, exactly. So I was just going to share with the board that we're going to be meeting with Dr. Thornton tomorrow, Mr. Jordan and myself and others to talk about informal session, organizational meeting planning, to know what we're doing on
Who's determining that?
July 8th.
Who's determining what?
Who meets on?
Okay, so let me,
Yeah.
so typically, Ms. Doyle and I would be doing the agenda planning.
Right.
Mr. Jordan and I have worked together to plan the retreats with VSBA since that partnership as the subcommittee. And so that's a major part of that discussion on tomorrow. And so I recommended that Rhonda would work along with
Okay.
Courtney rather than me for that purpose, because it's
Want some
July.
clarity.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
simply
and
it.
that's, that was my recommendation based on that reason. We had the 10th and 11th, which is a huge piece of July. Okay? Any thoughts about that?
Well, typically the first and third of the month, and I understand, Ms. Doyle, the situation with the swearing-in ceremony, and then typically what we had done in the past was eliminated a work session because we would have the retreat.
Right, right.
So, I will talk with you guys offline about that.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
And I mean, okay, and so certainly our time is limited, but I think it's important that there's This would be appropriate, but if you prefer to do it offline.
I can do it offline, we don't have to do it
Okay.
right now.
All right. All right, anything else for this session? Very well. We stand adjourned until our business meeting. We're gonna try to start on time. Our best, we have 14 minutes.